Every vendor on Jefferson Avenue feared Friday afternoons. That was the day Officer Daniels came collecting. The crowded street market sat between old apartment buildings and a busy downtown train station. Before sunrise each morning, vendors filled the sidewalks with fruit carts, hot coffee stands, grilled food, and cheap handmade goods. Most people there worked 12-hour days just to cover rent and feed their families. And every week, part of their earnings disappeared into Daniels' pocket. Nobody talked openly about it. Fear kept everyone quiet. If a vendor refused to pay, strange problems suddenly appeared. Health inspectors arrived unexpectedly. Business permits disappeared. Carts were ticketed or damaged overnight. The message was simple: pay or lose everything. Or Marcus understood that from the moment he arrived. For nearly 3 months, he operated a small fruit cart near the station entrance. Quiet, respectful, forgettable. Most people barely noticed him beyond buying oranges or bottled water during busy mornings. That was intentional because Marcus wasn't really a street vendor. He was FBI. Every day, he watched carefully while building evidence against Officer Daniels. Hidden cameras recorded exchanges. Audio devices captured threats. Anonymous complaints from terrified vendors slowly transformed into a federal corruption investigation. And Daniels had no idea. One cold morning, Marcus noticed an older food vendor counting money with shaking hands before Daniels arrived. The man looked exhausted. "You okay?" Marcus asked quietly. The vendor forced a weak smile. "Just trying to survive Friday." Marcus already knew what he meant. Exactly at noon, the familiar police cruiser rolled slowly onto the street. Conversations lowered immediately. Some vendors avoided eye contact while others quietly reached for hidden envelopes filled with cash. Officer Daniels stepped out casually, adjusting his sunglasses like this was part of his normal routine. He moved through the market slowly, collecting payments one stand at a time. No shame, no fear, like he truly believed he owned the street. When Daniels stopped beside a young woman selling coffee, Marcus watched her hands tremble while handing over folded bills. "That's all?" Daniels asked coldly. "It's been slow this week," she whispered nervously. The officer leaned closer. "Sounds like you need a better location." Fear crossed her face instantly. Everyone understood the threat behind those words. Marcus clenched his jaw quietly while pretending to arrange fruit on his cart. Not yet. The investigation needed more evidence. Daniels eventually reached the older vendor Marcus spoke with earlier. "You're short again," the officer muttered after counting the money. "I'm trying," the man pleaded softly. "You're short again," the man pleaded softly. "My wife's in the hospital." Daniels shrugged without emotion. "Not my problem." Then he grabbed several pieces of fruit directly from the cart and walked away laughing. Marcus felt anger rise immediately. He stayed calm, because sometimes the hardest part of undercover work wasn't catching criminals, it was pretending not to stop them sooner. 4-4. As Daniels continued through the market, he finally noticed Marcus for the first time. "You're new around here," the officer said casually. Marcus nodded, still learning the area. Daniels smirked slightly. "Then let me teach you something." He leaned closer. "Everybody pays." The words hung heavily between them. Marcus looked directly into the officer's eyes for several seconds before answering quietly. "I understand." Daniel smiled confidently, completely unaware he had just threatened a federal agent. And standing there beside his small fruit cart, Marcus realized something important. The man collecting cash from frightened vendors had absolutely no idea his entire world was about to collapse. For the next 2 weeks, Marcus kept playing the role perfect. Every morning, he arrived before sunrise, unloaded fruit onto his cart, greeted customers politely, and blended into the noise of the busy market like any other struggling vendor. Meanwhile, hidden cameras recorded everything. Officer Daniels never suspected a thing. In fact, the more comfortable he became around Marcus, the more careless he got. That's what corruption often did. It convinced people they were untouchable. One Friday afternoon, Daniels approached Marcus's cart while eating food he clearly hadn't paid for. "You settling in all right?" the officer asked casually. Marcus nodded while handing fruit to a customer. "Trying to." Daniels leaned against the cart confidently. "Then you understand how things work around here." Nearby vendors offloaded their eyes immediately. Nobody wanted attention when Daniels was collecting. Marcus quietly wiped his hands with a towel. 500, right?" The officer smirked. "See? You learn fast." Several hidden cameras inside nearby vehicles captured the entire exchange clearly. Daniels looked around before lowering his voice slightly. "And don't get smart about it." Wombastem ruled, "I can shut this whole cart down in one afternoon." Marcus pretended to look nervous. "I'm not looking for nervous. I'm not looking for problems." "That's the attitude," Daniels replied. As the officer walked away, Marcus noticed something painful. The other vendors looked relieved. Not because Daniels left, because Marcus paid without resisting. Fear had trained them to believe survival depended on obedience. Later that evening, Marcus sat alone inside an unmarked surveillance van reviewing footage with federal investigators. One agent shook his head while watching Daniels threaten vendors on screen. "He's been doing this for years," the agent muttered. Marcus stayed focused on the footage. The victims were too scared to testify. Until now, Marcus nodded quietly. Because tomorrow would end everything. The following Friday arrived under dark storm clouds. Tension spread through the market long before Daniels showed up. Vendors whispered nervously while preparing envelopes of cash like they always did. Marcus remained calm behind his cart. But hidden nearby were federal agents, surveillance teams, and unmarked vehicles waiting for the signal. Exactly at noon, Daniels' patrol car rolled onto Jefferson Avenue. The officer stepped out casually, sunglasses hiding his eyes while he collected money stand by stand. Same confidence, same arrogance, same belief that nobody could touch him. Finally, he reached Marcus. "You got my money?" Daniels asked coldly. Marcus slowly reached beneath the cart and pulled out a thick envelope. Daniels smiled while taking it. Cooperation keeps life simple. Several vendors nearby watched silently, expecting the same routine as always. But this time felt different. Marcus looked directly at Daniels without fear for the first time. "Actually," he said quietly, "this part's my favorite." Daniels frowned slightly. "What's that supposed to mean?" Marcus calmly reached inside his jacket, then pulled out a badge. The officer's expression instantly collapsed. Color drained from his face so fast it almost looked unreal. Before Daniels could finish speaking, black SUVs suddenly surrounded the market from every direction. Federal agents moved quickly onto the sidewalks while shocked vendors froze in disbelief. "Federal agent!" someone shouted. Daniels stumbled backward, panic exploding across his face as Marcus stepped closer calmly. "You're under investigation for extortion, corruption, abuse of authority, and intimidation," Marcus said clearly. The entire market fell silent, because for the first time in years, Officer Daniels looked terrified. Officer Daniels stood frozen in the middle of Jefferson Avenue while federal agents surrounded the market. The same officer who spent years intimidating struggling vendors now looked completely powerless as FBI agents moved toward him from every direction. "Turn around slowly," one agent ordered firmly. Daniels looked around in panic like he still expected someone to save him. Nobody moved. Not the vendors, not the pedestrians, not even the other officers arriving nearby, because everyone understood exactly what was happening. The hunter had become the target. "You set me up," Daniels whispered toward Marcus. Marcus stayed calm. "No, you exposed yourself." Those words hit hard, because deep down, Daniels knew it was true. Nobody forced him to threaten people. Nobody made him steal money from families barely surviving. He made those choices himself week after week, because he believed nobody would stop him. Now dozens of hidden cameras, recordings, marked bills, and witness statements waited inside federal evidence files. The case was over before the handcuffs even clicked shut. As agents searched Daniels, nearby vendors slowly began stepping closer. Fear still showed on many faces, but something else appeared too: relief. One older vendor stared in disbelief. "You're really FBI?" Marcus nodded once. The man's eyes filled with emotion instantly. "You have no idea what this man did to people." Marcus looked around the market carefully. Actually, he did know. He'd spent months watching hard-working people hand over money they desperately needed for rent, medicine, and groceries simply because they were afraid. That fear ended today. Daniels suddenly looked toward the vendors angrily. "You think this changes anything?" But